On January 14th, 2005, a probe named Huygens fell through orange clouds. It landed on a beach that had never felt a single drop of water. What it left behind down there is still causing arguments 2 decades later. Titan hides 2 oceans. One you can actually see, one that scientists have spent 13 years trying to prove is even real. The terrifying secret isn't what's under the ice. It's that nobody still agrees on what that even means. For over a decade, the story felt settled. Then, a few weeks ago, it didn't anymore. Not because of anything new on the surface. Because of something buried so deep, scientists are now arguing about whether it's even there. Picture leaving Earth behind and crossing more than 1 billion kilometers of empty dark. Cassini took almost 7 years to make that crossing before it even reached Saturn. Titan waits behind a haze so thick that sunlight arrives about 100 times dimmer than it does here. The air itself is heavier than ours, mostly nitrogen, and colder than anywhere on Earth has ever been. 94 Kelvin, minus 179 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, methane and ethane stop behaving like gas. They pool, they pour, they fill entire seas. And then you see it, a dark stretch near the North Pole, big enough to swallow the Caspian Sea. Scientists named it Kraken Mare. We grew up thinking lakes need water. Titan never got that memo. Every lake and sea on its surface is filled with liquid methane and ethane instead. Cassini's radar spotted them starting in 2006. It's the same stuff tankers carry across our oceans as liquefied natural gas. On Titan, it just falls from the sky. The moon runs an entire weather cycle on it. Evaporation, clouds, rain, rivers, all of it. Just built from different molecules than ours. So how big does one of these seas actually get? Every other sea on Titan had already been measured, depth included. Kraken Mare, the biggest one, broke the instrument. Researchers at Cornell reported in 2021 that one inlet near its edge came in at about 85 meters. But toward the center, Cassini's radar signal never found a bottom at all. That puts it at 300 meters at least, and possibly much deeper. This isn't a shallow lake we're talking about. Its surface alone covers roughly 400,000 square kilometers, bigger than the entire Caspian Sea, well past the size of all 5 Great Lakes combined. We can photograph it from orbit. We still don't actually know how deep it goes. There's a smaller sea nearby, Ligea Mare. It hid its own surprise. Scientists expected it to be rich in ethane, the heavier leftover of methane broken down by sunlight. Instead, radar and heat readings showed it's mostly pure methane. Nobody had a clean explanation for where all that ethane was going. Maybe it soaks into the crust underneath. Maybe it drains into Kraken Mare through some hidden channel. Even the simple question of what's actually in Titan's lakes turns out to be an open one. Even the surface story isn't finished either. We tend to assume Titan's rivers and rain just keep running forever. They shouldn't. Sunlight breaks methane apart and slowly turns it into ethane. Run that math forward, and Titan's surface methane should have dried up within about 10 million years. On a 4.5 billion-year-old moon, that's barely a blink. One long-standing idea points toward an answer. A layer of methane ice sitting just beneath the crust, slowly leaking gas upward for billions of years. Nobody's ever actually seen it. So if the surface can't even explain itself, what's really going on underneath? But the ocean everyone's really been arguing about isn't on the surface at all. For more than a decade, the story was settled. Saturn's gravity was bending Titan by about 10 meters, where solid rock should have bent it only 1. That gap, discovered in 2012, was called almost undeniable proof of a hidden sea of liquid water beneath the ice. The consensus held for 13 years. Then, in December of 2025, a team led by Flavio Petrica at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory went back through Cassini's old radio data, with sharper tools than anyone had used before. Here's the trick. Saturn tugs on Titan every orbit. How fast Titan snaps back afterward tells you what's hiding inside it. A liquid ocean should snap back almost instantly. Titan didn't. It lagged behind Saturn's pull by about 15 hours. Their result, published in Nature, says the same signal that once proved an ocean now fits a Titan with no single open sea at all. Not through liquid water, through ice. A deep layer of it, under pressure, laced with pockets of liquid water that could add up to something like an Atlantic Ocean's worth, just never gathered into one place. Not everyone's convinced. Luciano Ies led the 2012 tidal study that first nailed the evidence down. He says the new evidence isn't strong enough to rule his own finding out. Less a hidden sea then, more of a planet-sized slushy. An outer shell of solid ice, about 170 kilometers thick. Underneath that, slush and water pockets, reaching down another 400 kilometers. More than 550 kilometers of ice and half-melted water above Titan's rocky heart. 13 years of models about what's actually inside this moon, including whether it could ever support life, are suddenly back on the table. And the paper's own authors say there's only one way to know for sure. Wait for Dragonfly, the drone NASA plans to fly across Titan's surface in the 2030s. So does Titan have an ocean? Right now, honestly, nobody can tell you for certain. Huygens is still down there. Its batteries died just 72 minutes after it landed. Its cameras went dark, its radio went quiet. But it's still sitting on that ancient shoreline. 21 years now, outliving the very mission that dropped it there. And underneath all of it sits the real question. Not whether it's slush or salt water or something in between, whether any of it ever held anything alive. We don't know. Strangely enough, the same researchers who ruled out a clean global ocean now argue something odd. A slushy layer full of half-frozen pockets might make a better hiding place for basic chemistry than a simple ocean ever would. Nobody's ruling it out. Nobody's found it either. And here's the part almost nobody knows. Back in 2017, with Cassini almost out of fuel, Mission Control didn't just let it drift. They steered it straight into Saturn and burned it to ash, on purpose. Not because it broke, because if they'd left it circling, it might eventually have crashed into Titan, carrying Earth bacteria into whatever is actually down there. Dragonfly will still go, tracked and controlled the whole way down. Cassini, dead and adrift, could never have made that same promise. They destroyed a spacecraft that cost billions of dollars. To protect an ocean nobody can even prove exists.